This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Thursday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. Trucking to me is family. At the end of the day, there's a lot of family-owned companies. There's a lot of that. And my guest today is definitely inside of that. So we're going to bring him up right now. I got Daniel with ILG Logistics on the show. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, man, I'm looking forward to it. So, dude, how did you get your start in freight, man? What brought you into this industry?
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of people, I think, in freight. My old man was in it. And so It just kind of is, call it in the blood, and got hooked early. So, started dispatching when I was, 14 years old when he started up his company. Did that on and off for a few years, went to college, did my own thing for a while after that, and then found my way back about 7.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So when you came back in, man, and what was the big difference between kind of when you first started and then you going off to college and kind of coming back in? What did you notice the biggest change?
I mean, when I started, our TMS system was that whiteboard on the back of the wall there. We had 3 boards. Was what was available, what was dispatched, and what was in transit. And my job, after school, whatever it was erase what was in transit after it's delivered, move the stuff that was dispatched over to in transit, and push it out through there. So I think the technology side, it was, going from, 2006, 2007, into where we were at, 2018 was kind of wild to watch from the outside. Faxing every rate confirmation, right? We thought we were really smart when we had a big shipper, and we would, rather than handwrite the shipper name every time, is we would just write it once and then copy that a bunch, so we didn't have to write the shipper info every time. So it's just the little things that now we can automate. Now we can clone loads and duplicate loads and do all that. And back when it was, we were working out of Excel and handwriting everything and files for the month of, hey, what loads did we move and where's the paperwork attached? So now where we're at, where, I've got automated processes everywhere, kind of moving that information where it needs to go inside the orders, that's now. When I came back in 2018, 2017, whatever it was, we were on an older TMS, not a lot of technology. And so kind of seeing some of the stuff that we could get better on was a lot of my, first little bit into running the brokerage.
I think a lot of people have a hard time even comprehending that you used to have to fax. I remember when when we got the e-fax feature in there, man, dude, that was the greatest thing ever. Otherwise, we used to have to run over to our fax machine and start sending out rate confirmations that way, send them to truck stops for drivers and stuff like that. And dude, it was wild, right? And then it's like, you're right. I look at things now, and I'm like, what used to take like 8 to 10 minutes, you can literally get done in like 2 clicks inside of a, an efficient TMS. And, and I know we both use Rev and Nova and stuff. And, I got my favorite feature inside of there to a lot of people, it might not even hit them, but the load cloning feature to me,
oh my gosh,
one of the greatest features ever. It is so simple, but it's the most effective thing for my business.
Yeah, well, and the ability to edit kind of in line. So if you have, 30 orders that your customer sent over for a project and it's 30 different POs or -1, -2, -3, like to put all that in one spot so you're not clicking in, is hugely beneficial.
Yeah. And I think a lot, at least for me, like I don't have an EDI shipper, right? Where they're sending over and it's integrated and auto builds, all of that. I don't have that yet. Right. So it's like for me, having those manually building loads, it's like we got to look at how do we go in there and save as much time as possible inside of our operation. So, because it's like for me, man, like we're just in business development mode at all times, like we're always about how do we increase our revenues? How do we become more efficient with our time, and saving stuff from the operations is like, because again, it's just me and my business partner right now as we're building this up. So it's like, how do we get as efficient and streamlined as possible so we can focus on revenue generating activities?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is like you have to meet your customer where they're at, right? Like, you can have the world's largest shipper or whatever it is, but if they're going to continue to email you rates, or email you rate requests, like that's what they're doing. So figure it out on your side how to optimize that, and then maybe as the relationship develops, you can push them in a different direction. But at the end of the day, you got to meet them where they're at and make sure that you're moving freight the way that they want you to, and then add in your, the good stuff that you have on the backside.
What are your thoughts on this, man? Like when it comes down to like technology out there in the industry right now, how much of it are your guys as customers or prospects really asking for, as opposed to how much are, and even from like a driver's perspective, how much are brokers pushing out there as opposed to what's actually being asked for?
Yeah, I think, we talked about this, but I've never had a customer, hey, what's your stance on AI technology, or what's your stance on whatever this automation is? So for us, it's about, I've talked about this a lot, but how do we optimize our people to focus on those people things, right? How can they interface more with that customer? How can they have more conversations with that customer? How can they go on customer visits and not have a fall off in their freight, that's moving in house as they're on that visit? And I think for us, it's a lot more of the internal stuff of, how do we move through document processing, or how do we make sure that our invoices are being attached quickly to the load so that we're able to bill out quickly so that our days to pay stays down. All of those kinds of things is what really pushes it. And then on the carrier side, there's some really cool technology out there. And I think it was probably four or 5 years ago, we were looking at a tracking provider, and I had to remind them that, the drivers don't have the newest iPhone. Like you want them to download this app. Is it backwards compatible to these, old Galaxy phones that they're rolling with or whatever it is? Because they don't want that newest stuff usually, sometimes, at least back then. It's changed a little bit now with the ELD pushes and everything else. But I think that's the biggest thing is, again, meeting them where they're at. So how do we know our driver information better than anybody else does. We know our customers better than anyone else does. So how do we meet them where they're at to be able to optimize our side so that we can be more efficient for them?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. And I feel like, dude, I don't know, like my honest opinion on this is there's almost too much, like people are trying to do way too much right now at the end of the day, right? And I feel like, there's when it comes down to like carrier vetting, and I'm not talking about theft or anything like that, you guys. I'm talking about the automatic disqualification of qualified carriers based on parameters that literally are, I would argue, are meaningless shit out there, and they're just like the amount of hoops that some of these guys have to jump through just to haul a load. And I'm not saying that we don't utilize this stuff. I utilize that stuff out there, but I see out there in the social media world some of the hoops a lot of these guys have to jump through just to haul a load. And and I say this often. Brokers do this now because there's excess capacity. All of these hoops will instantly go away when the market shifts and capacity tightens up. All of these perimeters. And then I feel like there's going to just be a massive whiplash effect here, Daniel, where the drivers are going to be like, well, wait, why don't you need this now? Oh, that's right. And then I think a lot of this is kind of like a season, and then it's probably going to dissipate for quite a long time, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times where, like, when you onboard that carrier sign up or whatever it is whoever you're onboarding with, the technology side is, I think there's a lot of brokers out there don't really understand the qualifications that they're looking for in carriers. And so then when that technology comes in, they say, hey, this is how we think you should do it. And then it's, oh yeah, you're right. And then it's, whether it's C-level or not, making that decision that pushes down to all of operations. And then operations doesn't really get a voice in like, hey, well, I've got great carriers, but you know, they have this insurance policy, or they've only been in business this long, or whatever it might be, that, you know, they don't have an inspection, but hey, they're only running local Chicago freight, so they probably won't have inspection. So there's kind of some of that stuff where, you know, I think having your pulse close to the heartbeat of what's working in your operation side helps you onboard that technology a little bit more efficiently, because you understand what's actually driving, you know, booking loads on a daily basis, getting new customers onboarded, getting those loads on the board. Like, what does all that look like?
How much do you think a lot of the fraud and theft goes on because of a push for automation and just the absolute removal of like just having a real conversation? I don't know if this is just me. I've been doing this job for a very long time. I can tell if somebody's bullshitting me within the first 15 seconds of talking to them on the phone.
Yep. Yeah, we have a rule here of if it doesn't smell right, get out. Like, I don't care how good the rate is, I don't care how, you know, great they're talking to you or whatever it is. If it doesn't look right, if it doesn't smell right, if it's making you a little queasy, like, get out, like, find a new truck, because it's not worth that push. But again, to that point, if you've automated the entire load booking process, like A to Z, right, is you post it out there, it's an automatic entry into the system. They fell between our parameters on price. Let's dispatch them this load. They hit our criteria on our onboarding packet. We'll just send them the load. Like, that's a game to be fixed to a certain extent. There's ways around it, but at the end of the day, like, people drive this business. This is a people business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think, like, you know, at least from my standpoint, Daniel, we're going to automate to a point. Like, obviously we have technology to streamline as much as possible, but like, there are going to be a few hard stops for my company as we grow and scale. And it is going to be the push of the human to human interaction out there, because I feel like, you know, I like it at it over the next 5 years when AI dialers and everything else just becomes the norm out there. Do you guys think like shippers aren't just going to implement their own, and then every single sale, and then it's just going to go into a closed loop? I think it's just going to revert back to the Stone Age. Who's not afraid to go knock on a dock door? Who's not afraid to, you know, actually go in and get noticed in person to earn somebody's business? I think like that's just naturally where things are going to go.
Yeah, I think the automation side, like, it's helpful for the menial tasks, or you know, the tasks that people, it's time, not time wasted, but it's time that can be spent doing business development, or time that can be spent having a conversation with that customer or carrier or receiver, whatever it might be. Like, so, you know, order entry, like, however many ways that we can create an automation for creating those orders in the system, awesome. Get that off the AM's plate or the BDM's plate or whoever it might be. But then on the flip side of that is calling and confirming hours for shipper and receiver, confirming they have a dock, doing all that kind of stuff. Like, that's a great touch point. Do you have any other specifications that you have when our carrier gets there that they need to check in at a certain place? They need to talk to a certain person. Can we put, like, those are the places where people are going to make that impact. People are going to make that difference. And that's where, you know, everybody talks about, oh, our customer service is best, but that's where customer service comes into, is, are you picking up the phone, or are you having a conversation?
Yeah. No, dude, I'm right there with you, man. We're actually scarily aligned on what you just said there. And, you know, those are some of those key touch points that I think are the little separators that are out there, right? Because, you know, like, there's nothing that any of us are ever telling any of these prospects or customers of ours that they haven't heard 100 times over, you know, in that's just that day, you know, like, they hear it all the time, right? And I think, like, the real, and I know it takes a while to get in the door with somebody and earn somebody's business, but it's those little things like that, man. I think that's like what ultimately starts or stops your growth trajectory with a customer is how much of the little things are you doing? And then if you're, you know, in the rare instance that you're in the door with somebody where nobody's doing that, dude, you turn into a rock star real fast for them.
Yep. Yeah. I think, you know, for us, it's that, again, that idea of meeting them where they're at, right? Like, we have the portal for LTL where customers can get in and book their own LTL shipments, but I also have customers that have zero interest in getting into a portal and booking it. So I'm not going to just arbitrarily push out this portal and hope that they use it. And then we'll lose business when another person comes in and says, well, I'll do it manually. So it's that piece there of, you know, how do you find that perfect, non-perfect scale to make sure that customer feels that you're doing everything that you can, but also that, you know, you're doing everything on your side so that you're helping optimize their system and make their life a little bit easier on the backside.
How much trial and error went into a lot of your, because it's easy to sit here now, Daniel, and like hear everything you're spouting off and like, dude, that sounds so great. It sounds so great, but it wasn't always this easy, right? Like, there had to have been, maybe it was your old man, in the starting stages of this company. How much of the failure side of it led you guys to get to this point?
Yeah, I think it's funny because like the company that I was talking about with the tracking, right? Like, remember having that conversation, being deep into it, and finally just being like, no, this doesn't work, because we were using an old Samsung phone to play music in the office, and I tried to download the app on that and it didn't work. Well, now 2025 they are my tracking provider of choice because they changed up some things and the market changed a little bit. In the same way, like our LTL side, we had an awful experience with a company back in 2018, 2019 on the LTL side of rate aggregation. Got out of that, moved into something else, kind of didn't love it, paid a lot of money for it, moved back to that other company. But I think the biggest thing on the failure side, right, is everybody talks about you got to learn from your failures. So for us we moved back to that company that we ended up firing back in 2018, 2019, but knowing the right questions to ask, knowing how to set expectations, knowing how to have those conversations, and knowing when to escalate and when to work on it ourselves. Even with Revenova, it's been one of the biggest things for us is we moved from a very, I'll call it lucky because it was, we went live with Revenova March 1st, 2020. Before that, we were on-site hosted on a 14-year-old server, and good Lord, if we tried to VPN 3 people into that server, we would have been having an issue. So switching when we did with COVID and everything else, and having to send people home or having people sick and they were working from home, whatever it might have been, that was like some of those pieces. But with Revenova it's not a, out of the box TMS. You know this, I know this, I tell this to a lot of people, but the great part about it is you can make it what you want it to be for your business. Mm-hmm. So for us, that first, 3 months, 6 months of being on it, it was constantly emailing Revenova, hey, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. How do I fix this? And then realizing like, hey, I'm not going to get the most out of this if I'm constantly asking them to fix something. So why don't one of the great parts about Revenova is it's hosted on Salesforce. Salesforce is the largest CRM in the world. Go to YouTube. Like my business analytics manager, Jerry, he runs my tech stack, but he is an all-star inside of Salesforce Revenova. And when I ask him like, oh, how'd you figure out how to do that? He goes, oh, I just watched some YouTube videos. Like, it's crazy how that's kind of where it's come to. But now when we have issues with Revenova, there's a question that we have or we can't figure it out. It's going to them and saying, hey, we've done A, B, and C. None of these worked. What is your thought? So it takes out that, approach of, hey, they're just asking us for whatever, to, hey, let's make sure that, we crossed our T's, dotted our I's, and now, hey, we still can't figure this out. So now I'll come to you. I think that was a huge lesson for us of just investing it on our own side before, just punting it over to that vendor, because your business better than the vendor's ever going to know your business. Yeah. So understand what you're looking for before you go and start asking.
Yeah, dude, I need to have Jerry on my show, man.
Oh, everybody wants Jerry.
Bro, I'm going to be honest with you, Daniel. That's how I taught myself how to do everything. When you brought up YouTube there, I call it YouTube University. Yep. Like, you can literally get a PhD in anything. Just go to YouTube and watch some videos on it. That's how I learned how to edit my content, my audio. I learned how, dude, I have a professional mic setup and everything in here. I just YouTubed how to do it after I bought it, because dude, I didn't have the money to, or I wouldn't even know what to ask a sound engineer to come in and fucking set all this stuff up. Right. So it's like going to YouTube University to learn how to do all of it, bro. It's crucial out there. And I think a lot of the answers that people have to questions are literally just out there on the internet, right? Like, you just have to know what to ask and everything else. And you can save yourself hours and hours of your time by going out there and doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
So, dude, where is your dad still primarily involved in the business, or is he kind of phasing out a little bit at this point?
Yeah, it's dependent on the month. He's in or he's out. But yeah, I handle day to day. He's got, I'll call it the 30,000 foot view. So, I mean, he's watching everything, he's seeing stuff. Yeah. It's always fun to get the text messages of, hey, look at this load. Why is it whatever? And it's like, okay, let me jump in here and make sure that things are taken care of. But he's around, but not all the time, I guess.
How has that dynamic worked, man? Working with your dad has to be I don't want to call it a gift and a curse, but it has to be one of the more unique relationships in business out there when you're, working with the old man.
Yeah. I mean, I have the benefit. So I'm the oldest of 4. And so I've got 2 little brothers and a little sister. And my sister was in the business for 6 months in between college, just as a kind of in between. But I was always super interested in it. It was just kind of it's busy, right? Like I like being busy. I like having to think. It's not just, hey, you're going to, put this thing together every day. It's, hey, you need to use your brain and this developed knowledge that you have. And so for me on that side, like my dad is the man. Like I love him to death. There are times where we want to rip each other's throats out. Like it just comes to it. But to that point is like, we are more than any of my other siblings. Like we are the same person. Like we think really similar. We work really similar. Obviously I learned a lot from him growing up. I mean, I remember there was it's called the swap, but it's like a whatever swap meet is what it is.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, he would on a Saturday morning give my mom the morning off, and he would bring, whether it was the 3 boys or all 4 of us to the swap, and we'd walk in and you pay the $2 entry to get in, and then he would hand each of us $20, and it was, hey, go see what you can buy. And like that was always the fun thing for me was, hey, let's go negotiate and let's see if that $20 coin, can I get it for $5 and do all that. So like it's always kind of been in me, and that's always kind of been taught to me. On the flip side of that is, working with your dad, it's grueling. I think there's that piece of it. When I decided I was coming back to work in the business, I had a conversation with 2 of my cousins who both work for their parents, my uncles, and had conversations with them of like, hey, what works, what doesn't, like what are the things I should watch out for. And it was the same response that I've received over the course of however many years now. And how in industry and out of industries, you got to be there longer. Like first one in, last one out, especially at the beginning, like because you need to show that you're willing to give what it takes. This isn't just a walk in and, hey, keys to the castle, here it is. There's an earning piece to it where you need to make sure that from A to Z how this business works and how this business runs, and then you can start kind of moving into more of that management side.
Did your dad push you to come into the business at all? Or was he more like, go out there and live your life, man? If you want to come here and work, it's here.
Yeah, he's funny. So I was 18 years old. I was looking at colleges, and I wanted to be a pastor. That's what I wanted to do. So I was looking at Bible school. So I remember we went to visit one of the schools, and we're talking with a professor, Don Perini, who happened to be my professor for a few years after that because I went to the school. And I remember Paul, my dad asked the question of him, like, hey, wouldn't it be really smart of Dan to get, a business degree, and a Bible degree, like, because they work so similar and this kind of stuff. And I'll never forget, Professor Perini looks at him and goes, well, Paul, if he wants to be a pastor, I don't know what use a business degree would be. And that was like when I knew, like, yes, like I'm coming here, because he just told my dad that he was wrong. So on the flip side of that, like, there was always the thought, I think, for him that it would come. I was so against it, basically when I turned 17, 18 years old, I don't want to be in business. I want to go work at the church. I want to do these things. And then kind of had a turnaround after doing that for a while of just, it wasn't enough. I wanted to be with more people. I wanted to have more of an impact on a day-to-day, and just found that when I started here.
Yeah. No, I think that, it's an interesting kind of path, right? And because it's like you got to go back and I don't know, did your dad start the company when you were born, or did he start it before you guys were all born, or was it after?
Yeah, so he was in freight from before I was born to obviously now, but so he was a W-2 employee at a brokerage from 1990 to 95 he went 1099, and then in 07 he started ILG Logistics.
Okay. So yeah, man, it's like because I think back to when I first started, my company out of my bedroom, right? Like I was literally on a busted laptop on a folding table and all of that, and kind of starting out there. And, it's the amount of work to get something off the ground and running, I think, is overlooked by a lot of people. And, you've seen it though from the beginning. It probably, and again, I'm not going to speak for you or anything, but it probably drives a greater appreciation for what it is now, because you saw day one. And not a lot of people understand what day 1, year 3, year 5 even really looks like to get something off the ground. Because a lot of people start coming in after the financial stability, kind of the revenue stability is kind of already there. So it's like, what did you see, early on in those early days with your dad, of like, how much more of a respect for what you guys are doing now do you have because you saw that?
Yeah, I think, that's the piece that I hold on to the most, right? Like the idea of continuing on with this business and doing all these things, like there's a piece of it that is 1,000% for me, like trying to make my own mark, do my own thing. And that's my involvement in the TIA and involvement in cross industry. Like that's for me. The legacy piece of ILG Logistics is really big for me too, because I saw the 80-hour work weeks, for weeks in a row. There was a time where right when he started, he had our old building that we were in, and he was general contracting that while also doing 40 to 50 hours a week at ILG. So there was, I remember weeks at a time where the only time I'd see him was like a Saturday night for dinner, because all day Saturday he's building out the office that he wants to move into. They had a small, we'll call it 600 square foot office, 3 desks in there. That was their office for a year or so, maybe a little bit less than that, before they finally moved into the building that Paul had finished. And so from that point, like I just saw all the work that went into it, and the sacrifice. Also, I'm not going to say this for him, but for myself, is the anxiety. Is I was 15, 16 years old when he's doing that. I was in private school. My brother was right behind me. He had 2 more kids right behind him. So that trust in yourself, that belief in yourself. To Paul's credit, one of the things that he always says is, I met a lot of I met a lot of business owners that were doing it the wrong way and realized, well, if they can do it, I can do it. If they're doing it, like there's no chance I can't, because he knew himself well enough to know that. So
yeah, dude, that's kind of what, you see that out there, and I even notice it now, like, as I'm going out and even like making sales calls and stuff, and like, just like the low energy that some people have, and they're like, just the blatant, like, again, I understand they hear a lot of sales pitches and everything like that, but I'm just like, man, I kind of stop and think sometimes. I'm like, I wonder if the founder of the company is still involved, or if they're so far removed, or maybe it got sold off. And, because like, I feel like there's a difference, man, because like, going back to that build that your dad went through, and knowing what he went through, because like that's pretty much what I'm going through right now with a lot of it, right? And I sit, and those are the things that I kind of notice as I'm going out there. And it is kind of one of those motivators of like, dude, if they are in business and doing it, and that's the way that I'm like, I'm going to decimate people, man. And I know like it's just only a matter of time, because like, we have a set of core values inside of our business. And I know that our number one core value, it's subjective, but it's do the right thing. Yeah. Right. Like we all know fundamentally, when it boils down to it, what's right and what's wrong. Yep. Unless you were raised in the woods and you watched animals all day long, you know what's right and what's wrong. And I feel like if you hold yourself to those standards day in and day out long enough, you can't lose, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it stands out in our industry specifically. Like there's a lot of, talk about fraud, or you talk about just bad actors or people who don't care, is when carriers work with us, we want them to feel the difference, that we want them to understand, we want to pay you, send us the invoice, we want to get this paid for you. So it's part of that. You said it from your standpoint, our first thing on core values is integrity, because it's, without that, you're lost in this. And it's just not fair to the people that you're going to do business with. If you're not going to act with integrity, and we're going to be specific on that, we're going to hold our people to that, they'll get written up on that if they're not holding to it. Like that's a big, big piece for us.
You're the first broker, or one of the few brokers that I've interviewed, Daniel, that have said that about carriers. Like, no, we want to get you paid. We want you to feel that you're different in working with us. And it kind of baffles me that that's not a core focus for a lot of brokerages out there.
Yeah, we don't exist without the carriers. Like, I don't own a truck. So without them, doing what they do, like we don't exist. And so they're going to get treated with the respect that they deserve, because they're the ones that are moving that freight from A to B.
Yeah. I just feel like, I never ever overlook the fact that like I was that hothead broker early on in my career. And, like now though, Daniel, like I'm right there with you, man. Like I literally, and I'm still waiting. And again, I'll throw this out here again for any of you brokers who are listening. Bring me the business model where you make money as a freight broker without trucks. All right. I will invest right now, but ironically, nobody does that. And, it is such a core focus that I think is overlooked, because at the end of the day, man, I want to build up that consistency, right? Like I know my customers love it when those same drivers or those same logos on the side of those cabs show up, because like they have that positive correlation that goes along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Your relationship on our side, like our relationship is typically with somebody in an office, right? Like the relationship that you're building, if you're sending that same truck in to get loaded with the same freight, going from the same shipper to the same receiver on a constant basis, they're building a relationship with somebody on that dock. Like, you're doing the same thing.
Dude, amen to that. Daniel, thank you so much for your time. I got to get you back on. I feel like there's a lot more than we can dive into on a lot of this stuff, man. But dude, how's anybody reach out to you? If you guys are hiring or anything like that, put all that stuff out there so people can find you guys.
Yeah, you can email me. Our website, shipilg.com, as basic as it gets. My email, my info is all on there.
Perfect. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me. That is going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back tomorrow, as always, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central. If you got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.